we have a three-piece monument. The headstone and the upper base or plinth block are marble, and the lower base is a sedimentary stone, probably limestone, possibly sandstone. It's a little hard to tell, more of a regional material. So this monument is, at this point, unstable. It's leaning a large amount this direction. The upper headstone portion is still bonded or has been reattached. I'm not sure which. It looks like it might be pinned and still it's original, but I'm not positive about that. But anyway, if we just put a little pressure on it, we can see that the two pieces are moving together, but it's totally detached from the lower base. And additionally, it's already slid this way about 2 inches, and so it's becoming really unstable. So it's not a matter of if this will fall, if it's untouched, it's a matter of when it'll fall. It's already going that direction. Once gravity is you know, not working in your favor, when things start to lean, they get more and more exaggerated, and then of course there's, you know, many other forces that could act on them. So we're going to then move forward and cover the process of resetting, leveling, and then rejoining the pieces and making it stable for the foreseeable future. So we're going to move forward now. We're going to just use a few simple tools, and what we're going to use a lot on a significant portion of this is a really good pry bar. These can have different names in different applications. This is a hexagonal stock. These can be made out of round material or square sometime, but this is a good design, and it has a bent angle that's on this end. Sometimes these are called slate bars, like S-L-A-T-E, like to move slate, or bent end chisel bars. But this is a really good bar. It's 1 inch thick, and it's 60 inches, 5 feet tall, and it's good quality, made of actually American steel. A lot of bars like this are made from imported steel, and they tend to bend very easily, so it has to do with the quality of the steel and the amount of tempering that's done that determines if it's a strong metal or not. Okay, so first thing we're going to do actually is we're going to use the point end of the bar. So normally we want a point on one end. Doesn't have to be a sharp. In fact, we don't really want a sharp point. Sometimes these come new a little sharp, and I'll intentionally blunt them out a little because we're not trying to make a weapon here. So, but we're going to want this side to have a point on it, and so what I'm going to do is I'm going to plant it in the ground. And so the first thing I'm doing is I'm pushing this piece back uphill so it's more stable before we start to work on it. Okay, so this is just the first step here, and I'm going to just give it a nudge. And I'm just basically pushing it up. It's on a pretty big angle now, so it takes a little effort. And that's pretty close. Doesn't have to be perfect now. So now it's much more stable because it's not sliding off right now. So it's basically centered. Okay, so the next step is going to be we're going to dig to the bottom of the base. This is the part. We don't know how deeply this base goes in the ground, and there's a big variation. Modern bases tend to be square and flat on the bottom, and they tend to be 6 or 8 inches thick, sometimes bigger in bigger monuments, but they tend to be about those sizes. And in modern applications, they'll usually go into the ground 1 or 2 inches, but sometimes they're set above ground on cast concrete like a sidewalk top, and we're not really going to get into that now because that's more of a modern installation and this is more historic. So we're going to dig around it, dig a little channel around it, and so we're trying to get to the bottom of the base. Okay, I'm seeing some of that local sandstone here that we discovered earlier today. So this is the first step, is to open up the base and get to the bottom of it. Interesting, there's another chunk. Okay, once again, we could put a tarp down or a piece of plywood, make it a little easier to do the cleanup, but it's not a big deal to do a little handwork after when we regrade at the end. So we're just going to continue and open up the entire base. Now, why did this move in the first place is the first question. Well, if we look at the terrain here, we see that we're on the low side of a hill. If we look at the hill, it goes uphill this way. It's a slope. And so generally, everything gets pushed down hills over time. It's called earth creep, soil creep. It's a geological phenomenon, and it's impossible to stop. On a modern monument, the idea of a foundation would be to eliminate that, if possible, by doing a deep foundation under it. And so, however, in historic monuments, rarely did they do that. And so, regardless, things tend to get pushed downhill through this, through the forces of nature. Another thing you could observe is things like telephone poles and fence posts that were originally installed plumb straight up and down will tend to slowly lean down the hill. And so that's what we have happening here. Additionally, in a graveyard, we have the settling of graves, and that's another force that's significant. And also, in some areas, there's big problems with animals. And like groundhogs like to dig holes in graveyards, and they can find a lot of cavities underground around between the vaults and the caskets and things settled, and some areas have huge problems with that. Other areas it's unheard of, so it's very regional. Okay, so that's pretty good. So the excavation portion is now pretty much done. And we're going to go back to the bar now and use the opposite side of the bar. So this is the bent end. And so what we're going to do here, pretend this is the base of the bottom of the base. We're going to get this underneath like this so we get a bite on it, okay? That's the goal. The next thing we're going to do to have good leverage is we want to block behind it, and we want that low. This is the fulcrum point. The closer to the fulcrum point the block is, the more leverage we're going to get. And so in other words, I'll give you an example. We're not going to tip it this way because everyone's over here on this side. If we try to pry it like this, it's not going to be easy because it's going to be prying way back here against the bar. We're going to lose a lot of leverage. But if we wanted to tip it this way, and we don't, we would put the block close to here, and now we can easily tip it, okay? So it has a lot to do, everything to do with where the block is, okay? So I'm actually going to be on this side, so I'm not sure if you guys have the right angle for this, but it's going to be like right in here is what you're going to want to probably see. So yeah, you might want to move temporarily at least till I get it all. Whatever's best for you. So we'll just pause briefly. That's a lot of extra work. We're never going to take the top off. So it's not first, we're just not going to take it apart. So we don't have to. So a great deal of the time we don't have to disassemble them. And so we're going to do the least amount of work, the least amount of risk to the stone, and whatever the best practical solution is to fix it is generally what we're going to do. And so there's no reason to take it apart. I could set up a hoist, tripod, lift this whole piece off, and we could do this, but there's different, so not every situation has all the options. Sometimes things are heaved too much and too unstable for me to do it with this technique. And so that's why what I like to say is that I offer solutions to problems. There's many different problems, many different solutions, and so I show things that work in the majority of circumstances, but ultimately the practitioner, the person doing the work, has to make decisions in the field for the best option under the specific situation, because every stone is different to some degree. Okay, so I'm going to put this bar underneath that lip, just like I showed you. I'm going to put this block in low down like this, right here. Okay, and now I'm just going to show you, and I often do projects alone. You can see it lifts very easily now. Okay, I'm just putting my hand there. I don't need to have my hand there. I'll tell you one thing. When you lift it like this, if you come down quickly, it'll start to come back toward you, and that's when it could fall over. But additionally, this is a pretty stable stone right now because the headstone portion, the uppermost portion, is still firmly connected to the upper base, so it has a bigger footprint, and so it's not as nearly as unstable if it was just the loose top. Okay, so we can only join one tier at a time. Fortunately, in this situation, there's only one joint that's loose, and there's a tiny bit of movement between these two, and we can stabilize that after if necessary. So, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to add another little block so it's a little better angle for me. Now the next thing I'm going to do is set it up with gravel, which means I'm going to dump gravel around it like this. It's mostly going to be in the back where we're adding it. Then I'm going to cap it with a little of the sand. So first, you see, I made sure I could move it, and I had the blocking good. The bar is already underneath. And now I'll show you how I do this alone, because I work alone a lot, and I use my body, and I can go like this. And then I can pack under. Okay, so just the block slipped a little, but we're gonna need more gravel. Might have enough here. So now I can actually just put my foot on it. We want a low angle. We want to fill in all these voids now. So already, with just what we did, even though we didn't fine tune it, I know it's leaning this way a little. It's way better. Gravity is not going to do a whole lot on this right now. And so the next thing is, normally when you build this up, you'd be leveling the base. But with something that's already upright, we can plumb. As long as the edges are cut square, we can plumb it. So it still needs a bit more. So we'll go a little further. And then we do one more dimension, this side. And then we'll be good. Thank you very much. A little more gravel. Once again, a little coarser gravel would be ideal, but this will work fine. So I'm going to go a little higher now. Low angle. So what most people do when they do this is they're standing more in an upright position, and they pack a little bit like this, and it makes a perimeter, it makes a ring, it'll stay there. We really want to go low angle, corner of the shovel. So instead of up like this, down like this, angle, go under. And the thing about this kind of work, it's a lot like work. And we don't want to be shy about this. So we're trying to fill the whole void in, compact it so we feel pressure against us. So there's no voids if possible. Now another thing that'll help actually here is if we wet this down, we'll do nothing to the gravel, but the sand will condense and compact. So I'll just introduce a little water to this. I think I'm pretty good in that dimension. So we'll try it. I think I went a little past. I did, that's a good thing, because whenever I do the second side, that side will drop. So what I'm going to do is pull the bar out. Then I'm going to pull the blocks out. I think I've left blocks accidentally all over America, but I try to get them out if I can remember. They're not actually under the stone, so they won't really hurt anything, but I don't intentionally leave them in the ground. Okay, that's looking pretty good. Just come around to this side a little. Okay, a little more gravel over here. And then we're going to do this other dimension. Okay, come over here. I'm going to put the bar over here now. Now I'm going to bring the block back, the bucket, and shovel out of the way. Don't really need that one anymore now. Throw that with it. Okay, come here with this, and I'll grab the level. So now we're going to be on this side, and the idea is to plumb this so we can see it needs about that much. Okay, let me just get a little more of this here. As we'll use it up. Okay, now we'll do this one, this side. Do the same technique. Okay, just about perfect that way. This way is still good. I'm gonna go a little further. It's gonna tend to settle toward the sides we're building up. That's why we wanna get really good compaction. Okay, so low angle, really try to pack it well. Let's see what we got here. It's extremely close. It's good both ways, a little wobbling. We can fix that after, so it's close enough right now. We'll do a final compaction in a moment. To pull the block. Last thing we're gonna do is look at the row we're in. I'm gonna walk down here and sight the line. It actually looks really parallel. That's a good thing. So we're probably gonna leave it right where it is. If we wanted to change that angle, we could put the bar back under here. We could pick it up like, and then we could turn it like rowing a boat, okay? That's one method. The other method would be to plant this here like this, low down, and we could push it, okay? And both of those methods will tend to not disturb it from being level much, but those are ways to align it. So we're basically keeping it parallel to the existing rows. And we want to do that for the lawnmowers and for the aesthetics. And we're not moving it a lot, we're just fine tuning it. Okay, so we'll just come in and double check now. Still good that way. It's good, that was great, both dimensions. So the last thing we'll do is a final compaction. There's a little piece of glass, but that can go right into the gravel. Not a good idea to dig with your bare hands. There's a lot of time broken glass, little pieces of slate, and sharp objects. So I recommend no barehanded digging into soil unless it's in your garden or something, but not in graveyards. Okay, so I'm just doing a final compaction. Then I'm gonna do a little tamping with my the human tamper. I wear out my boots really quickly because my feet are a tool. One of my sons says his boots last 2 years. I say mine last about 2 months, but okay. Looking good, that's well tamped. So now we're gonna come in and regrade. Some people use like a 4x4, hit it around the edge, that's fine. A regular tamper won't really work unless we take it all apart and make a pad, because they're at least 8 inches wide usually, and there's nowhere really to tamp it with that much width. So, okay, so we're gonna go ahead and regrade now. I'm gonna try to put all the gravel, any gravel, rocks, in right now, pack them in, and then we're gonna level it straight out. Again, trying not to berm it up around the stone and try to have it flow with the landscape of the cemetery once it's all done. So just what we did already is gonna be, this is gonna be like 90% improved, because now gravity is straight down. Now it needs a sideways force to move it. But the next thing we're gonna do is raise it up, clean it, and then bond it. And then it'll be structurally sound and and good for the foreseeable future. So I'm going to come ahead here and just grade it all out, tamp it down as I go. Nice soil to work with here. Okay. Any questions about anything I've been working on here? Okay. Pretty simple. It's just basic leverage, but having the right tools and knowing exactly how to use them. Now you can use a bar without the bent chisel end. You're not gonna get as much leverage. It's gonna tend to slip off easier, and so it doesn't work quite as well, but it is usable on a stone like of this size. As they get bigger and heavier, you're not gonna have the same mechanical advantage of leverage that you would with the bent angle. Okay, we're gonna clean up this area. Clouding up a little here, but nice with a little shade. Okay. We can finish this up at the very end a little better, but basically good to level it all out so we can have a nice flat working area, not be tripping on anything. Always important to clear the area, not work on top of tools. Be very careful when you're working in groups. If you back up, it's easy to trip over something. And, you know, we just don't want anyone to get hurt when they're working. But the stones are heavy and potentially dangerous. We don't want to be scared of them, but we want to move them in calculated movements that are planned. And if we're working in groups or pairs, we want to make sure we have really good communication and that we're doing it in unison, and so that nobody is caught off guard, and that's the safest way to proceed. Okay, that's pretty good. So we'll move on to the next step. Okay, we'll kind of lay this stuff out of the way. Pretty much done with this bar probably, unless we want to fine tune it at the end. Okay, little extra gravel on here, get that off. Just a wood block. Okay, so I'm going to move on to some 1/2-inch blocks now. So I'm going to grab 4 of them. Some of these are slightly mismatched. Shouldn't really matter that much, but I think this one's a little narrower. I need to make some new blocks. They get lost and confused. Okay, so we're going to go ahead now and I'll show you how I'm going to raise this up. I'm going to use when I used to be a monument installer, I used my wrists a lot. I had to tip the monuments every day to get them off the crate. When they come crated, they have a shoe on the bottom, and when I go to set it, first you snip the band, you have to push it, you have to pull it out, lower it down, then pull the other side out. And in the process of doing that, I was always using my wrists, and I used to get sore wrists. I was doing it so much. It was a lot of force on my wrist. I realized a much better technique was to use my body, and so I'm going to come like this. And like shoulder, it's more like kind of like the things they use at football practice when they're like pushing those big things. And so you have a lot of strength. It's really safe. This way I can go around it. I have both sides of the stone. There's no way this stone is going to fall on me. That's why if you're working with 2 people, one person's doing this, the other one's not ready. I knew a guy that, I wasn't there, he was installing a new monument, and 2 guys, and it tipped on top of his leg, crushed his leg. If he didn't have surgery, he never would have walked again. Maybe he would have died. So, you know, it was an accident that happened, and he was experienced at doing it. But working with 2 people, you got to be all the more careful, okay? So I'm going to come in this side again. I'm going to put a block here and a block here. And now I've elevated it onto 4 blocks. So now it's up, okay? Temperature's changing quickly here. Okay, so what I'm gonna do, I think I'm done with this stuff, so I'll just kind of move it back a little. I'm gonna come now, all I need is, well, actually, I'm gonna do one more step in the middle. I will, actually, I just leave it on these 4 blocks to clean it. So what I'm gonna do is just bring water in like this now. So just gonna be cleaning between these two, between the top of the lower base and the bottom of the upper base. This could also be called a plinth block. Okay, a small little stainless steel brush that is about the size of a conventional toothbrush. And I'm gonna be angling this a little bit. It fits in here, but I'm gonna try to hit the bottom and the top as much as possible. Okay, I'm gonna work my way around and I'm gonna get most of the growth and soil under here. Now this is one situation. If this had a lot of really hard mortar, it was previously repaired, there was silicone or something that was hard to remove, you know, we might want to take the top off. Another thing we could do is just raise it higher so we could have more working space, and we could temporarily angle it a little. There's a lot of different ways we could work it. But anyway, what I'm going to do is just clean the most of this off. And actually, I'll get, in the meantime, I'm just going to take off this loose lichen that's on the bottom because it's so close to being in my way. But what we can do is after this is all joined, which will be done in 15 minutes maybe approximately, we can clean the whole stone in one piece then, and we can do it right away. But right now, and when I say clean it, I mean with, you know, with the D2 solution, and we can do what we did in the process earlier, but it's a lot easier to do it once the stone is joined together. Okay, so let me just continue with the prep work, is what I call it, to make sure we get a good mate. And so we're gonna just clean this out. Okay, now we'll go around the other side, same thing, and just get as much of this as we can. Okay, and again, we could take it apart, but it's not necessary, and this is going to be much faster. The end result will be equally strong, but there are some situations when we do need to take it apart. Okay, introduce some more water here, and I'll just get this heavy lichen off first. And I'll just take this edge off here because that's right where we're going to be joining it, just at the bottom. And just at the very bottom here. That's all. Okay, that looks good there. Looks pretty good. A little more water. Okay, now brush it. Angle it a little, both different directions. I'm kind of canting it up and then down, getting both sides. I put this on a little bit, somewhere between a stream and a spray, so it kind of hits all the surfaces and flushes it out really nicely. Okay, now I'll do what I can in the center here. Then I'm going to adjust the blocks, and then first dry it out a little, adjust the blocks, and then we can work on joining it. Okay, it's looking good. Okay, I could also use, sorry, I got to grab a couple of tools here. It's good. Just make sure there's nothing under here. Looks good. Okay, I'm going to go on to recentering the blocks a little. Leave a pad on each side here so I can move back and forth. Okay, so we're going to move on to the next step. Now, when I used to be a monument installer, I did everything with metal bars. They were granite monuments. They tended to be heavier. I discovered that on the smaller, lighter monuments, I could use little wooden blocks to move them. It tends to be safer, less likely to chip the stone, and it works really well. So this is like a 1/2 inch thick. This is only a 1/4 inch, but it's an oak block. So I can come up like this and tip this up. And then I'm going to go to 1 block now instead of 2. And I'm going to let it stick out a little on the back. And that looks good. Oh, there's some mating material under there, so let me see what's going on that. I can see some old, that's interesting. All right, let's see. I mean, we could join it, but it wouldn't be great. So let me just see how much is under there. It's set way back. It's kind of interesting. So not quite as easy as I thought it was going to be. Sometimes that happens. Let's just see how well bonded that material is on there. I can just actually do this like this. I might want to go into let's just see what we have here. And there's some hard material under there, which is set way in, which is unusual. And so someone reset this. So let's just see what that looks like. It's starting to come off, but yeah, so it's not quite as easy as I thought. I'll just try to get most of this quickly. So this is not original. Someone reset this. This is like a monument setting compound. And I don't know why they set it back so much. That's quite unusual. So it makes it more difficult. It slows you down. It doesn't make it impossible. It's coming off quite easily. Unfortunately, they put a bonding material under there, which I didn't see. Again, it's not original. And I'll just try to get most of it as much as possible. I can also go, I'll show you another trick we can do. I can actually probably scare everybody, but we can move things around a lot. And I'm just trying to see what, yeah, there's some monument setting compound under there, unfortunately, so we'll see. So once again, not an ideal example. And so it's because someone worked on it. I didn't expect to see this under here. Well, I have most of it off there. So I'm going to take this out, put this block back, and try to go the other direction. It's unfortunate. I thought it was going to be a fast one. Yeah, there's still some under there. Okay, well, yeah, there's more than is a simple, it's all right, we'll deal with it. So we'll block it this way. Okay, that's good there, and try to get this stuff off. And in a case like this, yeah, we take it apart and lay it down. It would be easier because I didn't think that was under there. So that's the way it goes. Just looking for tools that would be appropriate. It's a soft material, so it's really not that hard to remove. What I'll do is I'll put a block right along the outside edge, like that. We can also use fire hose a lot to do this. And fire hose are really good because they're, in the monument field, we always call them softs. And really, a brick hammer is not ideal for this, but this takes it right off. So I'll get as much as I can quickly. It's coming off pretty easily. So yeah, this is modern material, so once again, things that have been worked on, this is not original. I didn't anticipate this. I didn't think they reset it, and if they did, I wouldn't think they would set it in like that. That's unusual. Not sure why they did that. Should be about on the perimeter, not on the inside like that. And yeah, so sometimes this is the one thing that will slow you down, and it's a pain in the neck working under things. Yeah, sorry. So okay, I got this edge really good, but there's still more in the middle. Okay, that's much better. So since it's up in the air, I'm just going to finish cleaning this. So it's a little extra time here, but if something happens right now, it's not falling toward me, just to be clear about that. So that's why you could have someone helping too, but okay, now I can really clean this much better. So at least this area that's open is really well cleaned. So just one little piece right here left. It's not well bonded. If this was a hard Portland cement, then we would either have to just go over it or take it all apart to join it better. Okay, that's looking pretty good now. And okay, so I'm gonna take that out. I'll come back to this like this. Actually, there's a lot of, I can put this right in the middle like that. That's another trick. Now I'm sure this scares everyone, but I've been handling stone for 35 years, so it's just second nature to me to moving it around like this. And let's see what we have here. It's a lot better. There's just a big chunk in the middle right now, actually. And as long as it's on blocks, it's not going to move. So unless some force acts upon it. So it's looking pretty good, other than this one little spot in the center, which would be nice to get off. So we're going to use spacers on this, but so I'll use spacers that are a little bigger to make sure. So, of course, you try to do an easy demo, and it's not easy, but that's the way it usually goes. And that's actually, and in the real world, that's what I like to say is we can do simple demos, but then as soon as people start to go do the work, it's not simple because they encounter something different. And so I can just do this, and I can just bring the whole thing. Should have brought more blocks out, but that's all right. We'll work with what we have here. So I can just bring this right up onto some blocks like this. Nice and safe now. Okay, and I'll just get this middle area, and then we'll go lower it back down and join it. Okay, so let's see what we got here. Oh yeah, I need the chisel or something that's got some force behind it. Okay, there we go. So if we don't remove this old material, then it's not going to join up well, it's not going to seat itself well, it's not going to be well done, it's not going to have good performance in the long run. So you can see how with just some blocks we can elevate it, work around it. Of course, we could lift this off, but we would need some type of an overhead lift. I mean, we could actually block it and walk it off. If we built a little platform here, padded it, we could actually walk it off pretty easily if you knew how. But anyway, we're pretty good, just a little on the back here, and then just last cleaning, and then we'll go ahead with the setting. So slowed us down about 10 minutes. Almost done. That's why these pads help a lot, because I'm always crawling around on the ground. Okay, that's looking pretty good. Got most all the heavy stuff. We'll just hit it with the brush a little more. Rinse it out one more time, then I can dry most of it while it's up in the air, at least the areas I can get. Give it a quick dry. And then we'll move forward and talk about joining the two pieces together. Okay, that's looking good. Come over here, same deal. It's pretty good. There's tiny little pieces left, but I got like 95% of it, I'd say. Okay, so we're gonna grab the water now, do a final rinse. The pad's out of the way. Clean my hands off a little. Getting pretty dirty here. Okay, good. Cleaning up really nicely now. This battery-powered sprayer helps a great deal. They did the math on this, and they figured about 20% of the time is spent pumping. And so with this, we don't have to pump. It's lithium ion. It'll do at least 25 gallons on a charge. This is a 1 gallon, so should be able to fill it 25 times. Now I'm helping it out. There's a lot of chunks in here. Pretty much got it all. Now, can't really get the edge, but we'll do that after. So we're looking good all around now. Okay, good deal. Okay, bit of extra time, but not a problem. Okay, now we'll take some of these highly absorbent blue paper towel, and we can just kind of put them under here for a second. This does not have to be completely dry, but we don't want any puddles under here, and so we'll get most of the heavy stuff. Okay, it's looking good. If you start tipping stones around, it's really good to do it incrementally so you don't have too dramatic angles. I'm just gonna rinse these blocks off a little so I don't introduce dirt back into it. The water I'm not worried about. Okay, just clean these off a little quickly. Okay, so now I'm gonna go from this. Some muck under there. I'll put it on the outside edge so I can clean it again. So I'll go first from that, and I'll go down onto 2 blocks. So this is a lot more of a demo on kind of applied physics than I was planning. Okay, now I know there's a little more muck. We can just, probably should have waited to clean it. We'll get some of this heavy muck out that was under the block. That's pretty good. Okay. So a little trick I do a lot of time is we can make a little drying wand. If we take this blue towel, wrap it around a 1/4 inch block, and we can just slide this under like this and dry it out like that. We could even recycle this stuff. It'll dry out. It's really not that dirty. It's just wet. So if we just laid it out, we could reuse it for the same purpose again. Okay, one more time and then we're pretty much good to go. I'm gonna just set up the blocks and then we'll focus on the joining. So again, that slowed us down about 10 or 15 minutes, but that's the way it goes sometimes. Okay, I'll just try to keep the working area clear here. Getting a little messy. Okay, let's get a couple more blocks. What do we got? Make sure they match well. So on this side I have 2. Actually, what I'm gonna do is take these out and we'll go down to 1. Okay, and now we'll finally go down to the blocks we started on. This one is really dirty, so I'll use a different one. Or rinse it off because it matches. Uh-oh. Hope I didn't spray anyone. Okay, down to the blocks finally. Okay, good. Okay, now we can just align this. I can do this with a bar, but on a smaller stone, I can just do it manually. Low down, just like I'm doing, is best because it'll slide and not tip. And we just want to get it close. It's easiest to pull toward you like this. You get the most force. Just taking a, looks really close. We don't really have to measure something like this. This is called a wash. This angle right here is called a wash or a drop wash. And when the 2 drop washes meet, they make a bevel right here. This angle right here, you can define it with a small tool like a block. Just like that, it should come into the corner there. And so we're trying to have that on each side. But it's really close. Once we do the final joining, we can fine tune it from here, but it's very close right now as it sits, just by eye visually. If this didn't have a drop wash at this juncture, it would be good to measure because it's hard to assess the spacing. But with the wash, that establishes exactly where it should sit because we have this reference. So it's all set now, it's cleaned, it's on blocks. Took a little more work than I was hoping, but that's pretty much the nature of this. And you never know what you get into until you get into it. Okay, so that's good. And now we'll move forward. So there's just going to be 3 materials we're going to use to join it now. And we're going to use lead. This is called wedge lead. And I need a pair of snips. Is there one over there? Possibly. Any snips over there? Yeah, that's good. Those are, yeah, either one. Okay, and so this is called lead wedge or wedge lead, bit of a tongue twister. This is a traditional monumental material. They used to join big granite monuments by putting a strip of this. In fact, we were looking at some of the larger granite ones and they were done this way here in this cemetery. We're not going to use this exposed anymore. This is going to be under the surface. So they're going to be as spacers. So we're going to cut 4 little clips of this. This is number 2 wedge lead, which is a maximum of an 1/8 inch thick, and it tapers down to 0. Okay, and so there's also number 3, which is 3/16, and number 4 is a 1/4 inch. Number 1 is a 1/16, but it hasn't been in production in a long time, and we're looking to bring that back into production for some specific applications. Generally speaking, these are going to go, well, they will go with the thicker side on the outside, closest to the corner. We're going to put 1 in each corner. Okay, then I'm going to just pull this block back a little because I want to have it set back so that I can get the compound around the whole outside without it bumping into the block. Okay, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to mix up 1 unit of this Pratley putty, which is a really awesome material. It's an epoxy putty, and we're going to have this at contact points. That's basically going to be doing what pins would have been doing historically. And I just need some gloves, which I thought I had over here, but apparently they're not within arm's reach. Yeah, you could throw that box. That's good. Yep, this is great. These are good. Thank you. And so I'm going to put these disposable gloves on. I'm going to mix up this epoxy putty. Then we're going to use a monument setting compound and then join it. Now, some people have different ideas on the best way to do this, and they prefer or think the best way to do this would be a mortar. That is an option, although mortars are not really going to be nearly as strong, and they're also really tricky to work with because if the stone is dry or it gets too hot, the mortar will get crumbly. We definitely don't want to use a really hard modern mortar because it will be impossible to ever get off. And so just bear with me. So this is, all epoxies are 2 components, and this is, there's going to be, we're just going to mix this 1 to 1. It's just 2 parts, and as soon as I unwrap this, there's 2 levels of plastic on it. There's an outer and an inner, and then we're going to mix the 2 until the color becomes consistent, and it's quite easy to do. Okay, that one is open. And any epoxy, whether it be an epoxy putty or a knife grade epoxy, or even a flowable epoxy, which we're not going to use much in cemeteries, but there could be applications, they're all going to be 2 parts. And it's going to create a chemical reaction when you mix the 2 components. And so there's the 2 parts, like Tootsie Rolls, basically. And we're just going to mix these together. Now, this particular product is unusual in certain respects because it'll mix well with a little water. It'll set underwater. You could actually fix something that's like underwater, like a boat or, you know, a pool or something like that. But also, it's not in this application because we're not even going to see it, but you can drill it or sand it or paint it after it hardens. But it gets very, very strong. It's slow setting, relatively speaking, so you're probably going to have, in a temperature like today, maybe, I don't know how hot it is, maybe 75, 80 degrees, you probably have about 20 minutes or a half-hour working time once we mix it, and then it's going to just start to get harder and harder, and then it'll become unworkable. When it'll start to heat up a little, and most epoxies will, that's called an exothermic reaction. It releases heat as it starts to cure chemically. So it's a chemical reaction occurs. Now we've mixed it. You know it's mixed once you can roll it out like this and there's no lines of color, because when we started there was 2 different colors. One of the components was like a kind of a light tan, like a brown kind of tan color, and the other was an off-white. And so we can see we're pretty well mixed now. So what we're going to do is break this into 4 approximately equal pieces. First I'll half it again. Okay, and so I made basically 4 pieces, approximately the same. What we're going to do is roll these in away from the spacers so we don't interfere with the spacers. and we're going to put one in each side. And so these are going to be contact points. So the stone is going to squeeze. When we lower it down to an 1/8 inch to the spacer thickness, it's going to squeeze this. It's going to get a lot of contact points, and then it's going to make a bond, and that's going to be structural. Now around the perimeter, we're going to use a monument setting compound, which is this material here. This is another putty, but it's not going to harden like the epoxy putty. And it's going to be a very slow hardening material. And in fact, that's what they used when they did the repair, but they didn't, I don't know, they did it in a strange way. They put it inside and they hid it. But anyway, we're going to put it right around the perimeter. And so this is on 1/2 inch blocks, which I find is the perfect size block, because when we lower it down, it won't be too dramatic from one side to the other. And so we want to try to fill up the void as much as possible. And so we want it to just basically be as wide as the blocks. We don't want to have to smear it in, and it should just roll right in. And so just like that. And what I find also, you can kind of stretch it in place as you go, works the best. And a lot of people try to roll it out, and then it turns into a piece of spaghetti, and it gets too narrow. So start with something about as big maybe as a golf ball. Now there's little nodules of hard epoxy from yesterday that got mixed in, so I'm just kind of cleaning them out as I go. And that's just because when it's squeezed out, it intermixed a little. So just like that, and when we lay it on, it should be toward the outside. We need a little extra for where the block is. And if you want it should be, you shouldn't hit the block right now. But it shouldn't be way underneath either, so it should be right at the edge, just like that. So it's almost hitting the block, because when we lower it down, then it'll squeeze, and we'll get a really good bond. So this will be like a seal around the perimeter, and then the epoxy putty internally is going to be structural support. And so together, they're going to work to make a really strong set that'll last indefinitely. However, if this ever did get hit by a big falling branch, and it somehow had to be taken apart, it's possible we could take it apart and rework it, as opposed to with a hard Portland cement mortar, it's basically going to be impossible to remove, and it's going to be a real nightmare. Okay, so we're almost ready to set it now. Took a little longer than planned, but not too bad. It's going to be a really good set. I'll stretch this out a little so it fits in nicely. Tiny piece missing here, so I'll just add a little here. And we can always tidy this up after if we have to. That looks really good there. So I can stay on this side here and grab my little blocks. So now I'm going to do the actual set of the monument. And again, usually this would be done with bigger monuments with a metal bar, but with a metal bar we have to be very worried about chipping the marble. And with this technique, we don't have to worry about that. So I'm going to put this little 1/4 inch block under, and no fingers underneath now. So I recommend the back of your fingers, or just be very careful. Now I'm going to lower it down. This is the first side of the set, and it's going to squeeze out a little. And when we do the second side, much more so. Then we can make sure it's aligned, trim the excess, and it'll be all done. It should be a perfect joint. I'm going to go a little thicker. This block, I think, is a little thicker. Yep. Looks great. Okay, put this piece in. No fingers underneath. We're going to go ahead and set it. Okay, now we can fine tune it and get it to seat itself. Little back and forth motion. Now a heavier stone, we couldn't do this to, and it would just go down. Heavier, really heavy stone, we couldn't do it with this. We'd have to use metal tools. Okay. Now, by eye, it's hard to see because of the squeeze out, but the last step will be trimming it now, and then we could still fine tune it. Just looking for a trowel. This is called a tuck pointer, 3/8 inch tuck pointer. This is one of the most important tools for doing a lot of work, especially also mortar work, which we'll do with stones that have keyways in them, or in other types of repairs. Okay, that's pretty good. We're going to go ahead and trim this. It should make a perfect edge. We can tool it back a little. Sometime if there's a little chippage, we want to come back and rework that area a little, make sure it's tightly seamed. Okay, and I got enough of that, all that old bonding material off because I got a really nice joint. And so what would have happened if I left that stuff in there is it wouldn't have come down, it would have wobbled, it would have been messy, and it wouldn't have been pretty. It wouldn't have been as strong or a good bond either. So it was both aesthetic and structural, removing it. Okay, then the back. That's basically it. And so we'll take a look at it from above now. Looks pretty symmetrical. Now there's a little wobble here. We'll get into how we can fix that next. It's a little bit of an extra step. And I'll show you how we can take care of that as well. So it looks very close. Looks like it might have a little tweak this way. And so a little wobble here, but there's still a pin in there. Okay, I'll show you how we can fix that right now. Really quick. So we're gonna, first of all, I'll put a level on it. Just out of reach, of course. And I'm gonna just see how it reads. Now see there's a little movement here. It's better that way. That's why I'm testing it. It's just a little wobbling. So it wants to probably go that direction first. Okay, so what I'm gonna do is go back to this lead. It's a different application. And I'm going to cut a little piece of the lead. Okay, and then I'm gonna start with the thin part. You guys can't see it because I'm gonna do the back first. Okay, and it's already better. I'm gonna tap these in and it's gonna stabilize it. Now we could also fill in this joint after on this seam but it's not about to fall apart, but we could fill it in. Okay, so that's pretty good there. Now we could take small chisel. I need like a hammer and chisel, but see what we have here. Should have dumped these closer. Okay, this is good. And I can use this as a hammer so I don't have to walk to my truck. But you guys might want to come around somebody because I'm on the back side now. So I'm tapping in this little lead spacer. So, I mean, I should go grab a hammer. This is not great tool usage. Okay, now it's totally stabilized already that quickly. No movement now. Now I can also, so let me just, let me quickly grab a hammer because that's not working out well. So,
different type of hammer on here.
this is called a hand drilling hammer or a mash hammer. It's made for hitting other tools. Not all hammers are, but there's many different versions of hammers. So, so I'm just going to tap these in a little more, and then I can cut them off. And the people in the back can't really see what I'm doing. The reason I did it in the back is because I'm trying to keep it as plumb as possible. And if I went the opposite way, it would be taking it out of plumb a little. So that's why I selected to go from this side. I'm gonna go with something a little bigger first to try to get a little more depth out of it. Then I'm gonna cut it off. Okay, that's pretty good. Okay, so now I can come in and just trim it off. Lead is very soft. And so I can literally just cut it like this, and it'll just break right off. like that. Get the grass off of this. It's a small carbide chisel. Actually, a wood chisel will cut through lead. Lead is very soft, but it's a great material for many purposes because we can pack it in there. It won't chip the stone. It binds well. So that's it right there. Okay, now it's stable. No movement whatsoever. You can come check after if you don't believe me. Last thing we could do is I'll seam this joint since we did all this work, and meaning I'll add a little bit of compound to it. So I'm just gonna get this off right here. Just I'll do this one side, maybe two sides. Okay, so come back here with a little bit of this. Fortunately, I should get a smaller tool. Sorry. Okay. Okay, these are called tuck pointers. They come in all different sizes. This is the most common size, 3/8 inch. This is for doing a lot of different things, doing any mortar work. This is the smallest tuck pointer made. It's only 3/16 of an inch. And this is exactly what I want for this application. And these are Marshallton tools. These are still made in America. They're premier quality tools. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna roll a little bit of this out. I don't wanna smear this. This has oil in it. So what I'm gonna do is just try to work it in from the bottom up, like this. And with this little tool, and I can just fill this joint right in. And so then the water will stop going in there. And so that way the biological growth won't, take root there. And it's still pinned together well, so structurally it's good. So this will help protect that pin in there too. See, that seams it up nicely. It's a perfect match actually. And so I just closed that joint nicely. And since most of the people are in the front, I'll try to come around and do the front. And that's about it for this stone. I'll just try to get this off here. We're gonna have to clean this after, but I'm just focusing only on the joint. And I probably should have cleaned a little bit more of this first, but it'll be fine. We can do that after. So I'll get a little more of this. Again, the 3/16 inch tuck pointer. We're gonna lay this down here, and we're gonna work this material in. Okay, just like that. Move back a little. Now I'll get this side. And you can see pretty quickly, I can seam this like this. Okay, that's two sides. I might as well do the last two sides. It's not going to take long. So I got those two sides done. I'll just finish it up, and then we can clean it. Okay, just get this. Oh, there. This is open here, so this is good to fill this side in. I'll move out of the way here a little so you can get a better angle. Okay. Nice breeze here. Not sunny now, that's nice. Okay. We're gonna work this right down the seam and close this joint so it's not an open joint anymore. Now, there's one other thing that happened. The additional weight of lower, as this sat here, it squeezed the lower joint out, is what I'm trying to say. And so we can easily recut this. And that's not going to continue to happen indefinitely because it's going to reach the spacers, and also there's the epoxy putty, which is going to be structural. So when that starts to harden, it's not going to move anymore ever. Okay, that's good there. Very nice. Now there's just one last side, and this will be 100% done other than cleaning. So we could have taken it apart, but it would take overhead lifting equipment. And in order to clean the bottom, then we'd have to lay it down. And so this is much faster when you're able to do this, but it's not always possible. So that's why I say different solutions to different problems. But this is possible a lot of the time. So if it's possible, I do it this way. If it's not, we'll set up a tripod and a hoist and take it apart. So that pretty much concludes the resetting portion. And now we can move forward and do the cleaning, which we've already covered earlier today. And we'll use the D2 biological solution and soft bristle brushes and some plastic scrapers and clean off the growth on it and the lichen. And that's about it. I hope this was a good demonstration and a lot of people learned from it. So thank you.